Why did motel owners let Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow sleep under the roof and not pick up the phone until after the couple was gone? You'd figure somebody would have ratted them out the second they recognized those faces. But the record shows it's almost never happened that way. And the reasons are a lot stranger than just being scared. I'm Mr. V, and welcome back to the Hidden Lens. Today we're digging into the Depression-era America and the people on the other side of the counter. The motel owners and tavern keepers and folks running the tourist courts and motels who had Bonnie and Clyde standing right in front of them and mostly did nothing about it. But there is one famous time that a motel owner did notify the law. And boy, oh boy, did the shit hit the fan. The ensuing gunfight turned their property into a total battleground. So let's get into why the rest of them kept their mouth shut. Let me start with the exception because it's the best case. We've got it, and it shows you exactly why everybody else stayed quiet. Platte County, Missouri, July of 1933. The gang pulls into the Red Crown Tourist Court. Two little brick cabins joined by a couple of garages and the Red Crown Tavern sitting just south of it. Clyde liked the place because it's built out of brick and tile, and that made him feel secure. He told his people that this is where we're going to stay the rest of the night, even if we all get taken before morning. Famous last words, well, at least for one of them. Here's what tripped them up. Blanche Barrow went to rent the cabins for a party of 3. Then she walked over to the tavern and ordered 5 fried chicken dinners, 5 of them for a party of 3. Didn't she know that motel owners are good at counting? They have to count the money, the number of towels they leave in the rooms, all kinds of things. And she knew they could count because she paid for those 5 chicken dinners with a fistful of coins the gang got from robbing vending machines. Yep, they were equal opportunity robbers. They'd rob people, they'd rob gas stations, vending machines, and the next night she did it again. 5 more dinners and a whole lot of coins. Now, here's the part that sealed the deal. The local police, guess where they ate? At the Red Crown Tavern. The manager, Neil Hauser, knew the cops personally because they were his regulars. He had Captain William Baxter of the Missouri Highway Patrol coming through. He had the Platte County Sheriff Holt Coffee available as well. So when Hauser got suspicious, he didn't have to figure out who to call or worry about some long distance operation. He just had a word with the lawmen who were already sitting right there at his place. And that's what makes Platte City a little different than everywhere else. That personal, direct line straight to the law. It's like Hauser had his own personal bat phone. Who you gonna call? Damn, did I really do that? I mixed Batman and Ghostbusters. Speaking of Ghostbusters, the cops responded and a lot of things started getting busted. The result was the firefight on July the 20th, 1933. Where are we going? And remember what Clyde said about getting killed before morning? Well, the cabins and the taverns got torn to absolute pieces. Buck Barrow took a round to the noggin and he'd succumbed to it a few days later, and the gang barely escaped. So let's flip this around. If you're any other motel owner in 1933 and you heard what happened at the Red Crown, are you gonna reach for that phone? Oh, hell no, I don't think so. But do you know something that you should reach for right now? It's that like button, so go ahead and click it before it gets away. And don't forget the hype feature. It kind of remind me of Buck Barrow because it won't be here much longer. And that Red Crown mess brings us straight to reason number 1, that people are not gonna drop a dime on Bonnie and Clyde. It's the physical danger aspect that they'd be in. Clyde Barrow, once he was cornered, would do anything to keep from going back to the pokey. And I mean literally. Clyde had been sent to the Eastham prison farm in Texas, and the brutality he suffered there broke something in him. Maybe he wasn't right in the first place, but he sure wasn't when he left. He swore he would never be taken alive and sent back to a place like Eastham again. By this point, he had already been linked to the fatalities of 9 lawmen. So a motel owner who reports an armed people sleeping in a cabin number 2 isn't giving some quite anonymous tip, he might be starting a full-scale tactical gunfight on his own property and with his own building in the crossfire. The Red Crown proved exactly what that looked like. Calling the cops meant risking your entire livelihood being leveled to the ground. Reason number 2 is simpler than you'd think. A lot of these folks had no idea who they were looking at. A lot of people think that everybody in America had Bonnie and Clyde faces perfectly memorized, right? It's on your memory. And sure, if you've seen the 1967 movie Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, those faces are burned into your brain. But back in the real 1930s, those newspaper photos were grainy, smeared, and low contrast. Plenty of people running a tourist court and motels out in the sticks weren't following crime coverage at that time, not that close. They were just trying to survive a week of the Great Depression. Now, after the Joplin Hideout raid back in April of 1933, the police discovered a roll of film the gang left behind, photos of Bonnie posing with a cigar and Clyde with his guns. And those pictures got splashed across newspapers everywhere. But even then, the recognition was shaky at best. There's a story from W.D. Jones about a waiter at a restaurant who told him, all excited like, that Bonnie and Clyde had just been in the area and they just left it. He was completely clueless that he was talking to a member of the Barrow gang standing right there in front of him ordering sandwiches. That's how shaky the recognition was then. Remember, this is going to be rule number 3, and it's the one I think matters most, and it cuts straight to the psychology of who controls. This was the Great Depression. People had watched banks foreclose on their farms and their homes and throw them out into the dirt. Banks weren't the good guys to a lot of folks. They were the villains. So when a couple come rolling through, robbing the system, even if they were mostly hitting mom and pop gas stations and small town grocery stores rather than the massive downtown banks, there was this twisted little bit of sympathy running beneath the thoughts of some people. Nobody was out there cheering for violence, though, don't get me wrong. But the idea of regular people striking back at the system that had crushed everyone else, well, that played well with those folks. And that meant some folks who put Bonnie and Clyde up for the night were quietly rooting for them, or at least weren't in a hurry to help law enforcement or a system that they didn't much trust either. It's like that saying you've heard people repeat, I'm from the government, we're here to help you. Hell no, I don't need that kind of help. Reason number 4, even if you wanted to report them, who the hell are you going to call? That's not Ghostbusters, unless you got that bat phone hooked up. See, there we go again. Rural America in the 1930s didn't have a system for this. There's no national hotline, no FBI database hanging pictures in the motel lobby. There's a lot of small town sheriffs. They shared one single phone line with the rest of the town, and that was it. Bonnie and Clyde are well known down in Texas and Oklahoma, but crossed the state line into Missouri, and a lot of people didn't know who they were looking at. And keep in mind, this was the same summer as the Kansas City massacre, the Union Station shooting in June of 1933. So whatever law enforcement sources existed were already stretched thin, chasing gangsters all over the Midwest. So a motel owner who did suspect something might not even know who he could call. The Red Crown worked perfectly because Hauser skipped all that bullshit. His lawmen were already eating dinner 20 feet away. And reason number 5 ties it all together. After Platte City and after the Joplin shootout before it, the lesson was out there for everyone to see. You call the cops, your property gets turned into a firing range. So even the owners who wanted to cooperate had a real good reason to look the other way. And that's a big part of why Bonnie and Clyde stopped trusting tourist cohorts, though, and the motels. They wouldn't trust them at all. And they started sleeping in the car and camping out in the middle of nowhere. They knew that checking in anywhere was a roll of the dice on whether the person at the desk would rat them out or not. So let's put it all together, and the picture comes clear. It wasn't just one thing that caused the people and the no-tell motels not to notify the law. It was people didn't recognize them. People who were flat out terrified of what would happen if they did say something, and people who had their own grudge against the banks and the law, and a backwoods law enforcement setup where there was nobody obvious to call. They hadn't even heard about Ghostbusters, nor Batman. Well, I don't know about Batman. Stack all that up, and the surprise isn't that so few people reported Bonnie and Clyde. The surprise is that anybody did at all. And notice how this whole thing ends. The ones who finally brought them down didn't do it because of a phone call from a motel desk. It took Frank Hamer and an arrangement with Avi Melfin and the Melfin family to put Bonnie and Clyde in a rural road outside Gibsland, Louisiana, on the morning of May the 23rd, 1934. Not a tip from a motel. It was a setup on an empty dirt road where nobody behind a counter had to risk a single thing. That's where Frank Hamer and his deputies gave Bonnie and Clyde a permanent change to their lifestyle. Now, if this one stuck with you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment below and let me know which piece of the Bonnie and Clyde story you want me to pull apart next. I'm Mr. V, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Hidden Lens.